not just those of us who work every day in the schools, but to understand what is needed to teach science, what is needed to teach math, the arts and music at both our secondary schools. So this is just an introduction. Over the coming weeks, we'll be putting this out online. We'll be putting it up on the website and communicating to as many individuals in the community who are willing to listen. Any questions?
Not a question. One thing I'd like to draw your attention to the middle school specifications here. If you look at the recommendations for a 750 student school, that's more or less what we've got in mind. It comes to 122,000 square feet. And that is more or less the size of the high school. But when you stop and look at how the rooms are structured, and you start to think about what you would have to do, first of all, in terms of really taking down walls to make classroom sizes larger, and then you think about the problems that the infrastructure of the high school has, you really have to begin to question the feasibility of moving the middle school into that high school facility.
Just a point if I could add on that. When the high school was renovated in 1990, a number of the original classrooms were subdivided with the goal of, or with the aim of producing more individual classrooms. But as a result, you have many classrooms that are in the 500 to 600 square feet. And if you're physically sitting in those classes, let's say it's an English class or a social studies class, just the vision to, if there's a whiteboard or the front or where someone is presenting, the angle is extremely close. That makes that visibility very, very tight. And then again, when you layer on top of that class sizes in social studies and English classes that are in that range of 25 to 30 students, there's no opportunity for that teacher to break that class apart, to say do some small group work. Perhaps you're working on a debate in social studies and you want this group working on this aspect and another group over here. The teacher's moving from group to group. It is physically impossible to do that given the limitations of just the space.
Will you post these on the website? Are you going to put current designs alongside?
We will have, a template that will take each one of the program areas. So let's say science at the high school. We'll give what's recommended for size. It will give what we currently have. We'll talk about what we're not able to do in terms of the program. And then we'll probably have some kind of a visual picture that gives people a better understanding rather than just numbers.
So you have numbers, a written description,
Right.
and a visual.
Right.
Great.
Great.
Wow, good.
Next, we have our ongoing report on the FY08 program and staffing impact. And Dr. Strout and the committee made a commitment to regularly at our meetings discuss the impact of the budget on services that we're providing to the students in North Reading. And tonight, I'm just going to focus on the reading program in North Reading schools.
Well, I think Mr. Cassell's presentation earlier tonight focused on the importance of what we're trying to do as teachers, educators in class, that today, in terms of teaching and learning, we're talking about integration of all of the frameworks, that we're not just about MCAS or SAT preparation, but trying to look at how students learn, trying to provide multidisciplinary approaches, integrated approaches to teaching and learning. However, one of the fundamentals that begins even before a child comes into school is that strong foundation of literacy and reading. that if you do not build on that foundation, then the ability to take information similar to what Mr. Cassell was talking about becomes increasingly difficult for students. Therefore, when you step back and think about building a program, whether it is staffing that program or class size issues, oftentimes just simple numbers overshadow some of the difficulties that we're experiencing. In reading, our current staffing levels at the elementary level include one consulting teacher of reading for each of our elementary schools, so that there's one teacher here, Mrs. Lake actually was here earlier, is the reading teacher at the bachelor school. Her job is not only to work directly with children, but to serve as the resource for all of the teachers in the building, making sure that there is a strong foundation for literacy. And so each of the elementary schools has one of those teachers. However, when you start thinking about and scheduling out the individual time that these teachers are spending, or this teacher is spending at each school, making sure that children have appropriate interventions, as well as working with teachers, you come to the quick conclusion that that time is extremely limited, and as a result, you're going to lose more and more children in terms of their background in reading and literacy. So that when students are coming into the middle school, while we would feel at that point students should have acquired, or most of the students should have acquired, that strong background in fundamentals in reading and literacy, because now we're getting very more focused on content, more focused on individual subjects. What we're finding is that we're actually not able to keep up with the demands for increased support in reading. At the middle school, we are currently providing each of our sixth graders, this is a relatively new program, with twice a week there is a reading comprehension class that goes on. So we have two teachers who are providing that support, and in addition are providing support through the Wilson Reading Program. We hear the names oftentimes, and they're meaningless for people outside who are not working directly in teaching, but the Wilson Reading Program is a highly intensive program that requires direct intervention between the teacher and either one-on-one or a relatively small group of students. It is highly individualized with a goal of focusing on decoding, improving of fluency, improving of spelling and comprehension. It's basically catching students who have not achieved that necessary foundation through an intervention program. The Wilson Reading Program is typically a program that is recommended oftentimes by outside either hospitals or providers. And if a school district is not able to provide this program with certified teachers, then particularly in special education, then that would be a good reason for not sending your child to the North Reading Public Schools. And so we have made a commitment here in North Reading, not only to train teachers in Wilson Reading, but to implement it. But again, it's an issue of staffing versus student ratio. And this year, or last year in the budget, the elementary principals were requesting an additional reading teacher in each one of the schools, elementary schools. We were requesting a third reading teacher for the middle school, and an additional reading support for the high school. None of that has been achieved. And so at this point, we are questioning whether or not we're going to be able to provide the support for building that reading and literacy that is needed for current student achievement. So that when you see MCAS results appearing flat, when you see SAT scores either appearing flat or in some cases declining, then I have to look back and ask the question why. And if we are not able to address issues in literacy fundamental to education, then we are weakening that foundation for future learning. And so I see this as a significant impact. This was a staffing issue. We're making do, but we're not providing the kind of support that we absolutely need. You're going to be seeing in this year's budget, again, a request to support reading and literacy. We did make strides. The one area that we were so committed to was purchasing a new language arts and reading program. 2 years ago, at our elementary level, that was the #1 priority. And then this year, in our middle school, we purchased textbooks. But again, without teachers, all of the programs in the world are not going to achieve the kind of results that we feel North Reading children deserve.
Thanks, David. And we'll continue these on a meeting-by-meeting basis, talking about challenges we have in the different areas of our school system.
Just a question. David, in order for teachers to catch that kids just aren't grasping what they're reading, don't they have to give them an increased number of reading and writing assignments? Haven't we actually experienced a decrease because of classroom sizes, that teachers aren't giving as many long-term assignments?
I think that issue becomes more of a problem at our secondary level. When you look at class sizes in the middle school, particularly in grades 7 and 8, we're looking at typically 28 to 29, 30 students in the core classes. And then in the high school level, of course, there's greater variation because of student electives. But if you look at fundamental English, 9th grade English, 10th grade English, you're seeing that those class sizes are also in the upper 20s, 28, 29, and 30. And that certainly has an impact if you're teaching 5 classes multiplied by 5 by 30 students. How frequently, not just can you give an assignment, evaluate that assignment, and provide some feedback, but talking one-on-one with students, sitting down with that student and saying, let's take a look at what you wrote, as opposed to having the whole class pick 1 or 2 examples and say, well, use this as an example and go back and try to incorporate that into your writing. At the elementary level, I think the issue is not directly an issue of class size now, but more of that intervention strategy with a need to have a second consultant teacher of reading who is working directly with children on one-on-one issues with literacy. And these are not necessarily students who are identified with special learning, IEP. These are students who are typically non-special education, but can clearly benefit from improvements in basic reading. If you look at the students who are achieving, just take the students who are achieving at the needs improvement level on MCAS. There, at each school, at each grade, you have a number of children who need that direct intervention. Remember, the goal is, under No Child Left Behind, every child needs to be proficient in reading and in math and science, but let's just talk tonight about reading. And we have numbers of children who are in that needs improvement. Push them up. And that's going to be very difficult to do. And people oftentimes say to me, well, there's always been an issue with reading. But again, now that bar is set very high. With the No Child Left Behind, with proficiency being a very high standard, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 25 years ago.